It is 3 o'clock in the morning. The silence on the Zaporizhzhia front is thick, almost solid, broken only by the wind and the distant murmur of artillery. A small Ukrainian assault group, moving like ghosts in the darkness, slips through no man's land. They are not a large armored brigade. They are not a human wave. They are something new, something faster and more lethal. Hours later, at dawn, the war maps are updated with a tremor. A 3.5-kilometer deep penetration along a 5-kilometer line. A blue and yellow flag flies over the village of Mali-Sherbaki. Russia thought this was a war of attrition. It was happy to be the tortoise, advancing millimeter by millimeter, grinding everything in its path with exasperating but steady slowness. They didn't count on one thing. Ukraine has just broken the tortoise's shell. Using a brutal new assault tactic, Ukraine has torn apart the Russian front at one of its most vulnerable points. This lightning advance will have Vladimir Putin wondering what the hell just happened. Welcome. What you have just witnessed is not just another skirmish. It is proof that Putin's war manual is obsolete. Thank you for joining us. Your approval is what matters most to us. If you value this kind of in-depth analysis, which connects the tactical dots with grand strategy, we ask that you subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and support us with a like. Your support allows us to continue unearthing the truth behind the fog of war. Now let's return to that smoking breach in Zaporizhzhia. What happened on October 12th was not a stroke of luck. It was the culmination of a new military doctrine. The news, confirmed by outlets such as United 24, is that Ukrainian assault troops, created specifically for this task, have done exactly what they were designed to do. They broke through Russian defenses. The pressure was so intense and so concentrated that those defenses completely collapsed, allowing Ukraine to take not just one, but several villages. The village of Mali-Sherbaki is now home to the 24th Separate Assault Battalion, the legendary Aidar, operating alongside the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment. Together, these units annihilated Russian forces so decisively that they were able to enter the village and raise the Ukrainian flag once again. The video shared on Facebook, announcing the liberation of Mali, made this clear. But beyond the image, there was a key word in the message: pobratimami, a word that translates as brothers in arms. This is not cheap poetry. It is the key to Ukraine's new assault strategy. While Russia attacks in uncoordinated waves with penal units and mobilized troops who barely know each other, Ukraine counters with teamwork, dedication, and the ability to unleash coordinated hell on its opponents. And the act of raising the flag also has additional symbolism. It is a direct blow to Russia's psychological warfare. In recent weeks, we have seen an increase in a new and desperate Russian tactic. Small sabotage groups infiltrate villages in the gray zone, quickly raise a Russian flag, record a propaganda video of a fake victory, and then are wiped out by Ukrainian forces minutes later. We saw this in Verbov, in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Russia lied, claiming a capture that never happened. Ukraine's response is clear. Russia needs to fake its flag raisings. Ukraine does it because it has actually retaken the territory. Confirmation of the victory in Zaporizhzhia came from Colonel Valentin Manko himself, head of the Assault Forces Directorate. In a video, he not only confirmed the success of the assault on Mali-Sherbaki, but added more crucial information. During the same push, Ukraine also cleared the neighboring village of Sherbaki and partially liberated another small village called Stepove. October 12th was an extraordinarily productive day for Ukraine. And for Russia, it was a catastrophic day. Colonel Manko explained the magnitude of the blow. The 3.5-kilometer deep advance along a 5-kilometer front may not seem like much on a map of Europe, but in this trench warfare, it is an earthquake. This single operation has wiped out months of painful and slow Russian advances. Let's remember the context. As CNN reported on October 1st, Russia was already dealing with a substantial slowdown in its advance. Its major summer offensive had failed to achieve the objectives Putin had set. Throughout September, Russia only managed to take 259 square kilometers, 44% less than in August. Russia advances slowly, and every meter of ground gained is like gold dust to Putin, used to create the perception that victory is inevitable. When Ukraine, in a single day, recaptures territory that Russia has fought for months to gain, that perception is shattered. Mali-Sherbaki proves that Ukraine is just as capable, if not more so, of taking ground. But this counteroffensive is even more painful for the Kremlin for another reason. As Euromaidan Press points out, the fight for these villages has been an open wound since March 2025. At that time, Russia made significant advances in this area, taking Pyatikhatki. Ukraine counterattacked and recaptured Shcherbaki. Then Russia launched another counterattack in July and retook the territory. It has been a bloody tug-of-war for more than half a year. What Ukraine achieved on October 12th was not just a counterattack. It was putting an end to that long and bloody phrase. The dispute over these villages is over, at least for now, and it is Ukraine that has remained standing. At first glance, what Ukraine achieved on October 12th may seem small in the grand scheme of the war. However, if we zoom out, we see that the liberation of Mali Shcherbaki is part of a much larger trend happening across the country. Ukraine is on the counteroffensive and has been slowly regaining territory for months. We need only look at what is happening in Zaporizhzhia and Donetsk. On October 10th, Ukrainian Army Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky revealed that a large-scale Ukrainian counteroffensive is underway. In Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine has managed to liberate around 180 square kilometers. In Donetsk, the liberation is going even better. Syrsky reports that around 212 square kilometers have been liberated. So what we saw in Zaporizhzhia is not an isolated incident. It is Ukraine continuing an approach that has already proven to work elsewhere. This was not the fall Putin had imagined. It was supposed to be a season of celebration after the huge territorial gains of the summer. Instead, Ukraine is reversing every gain Russia made, pushing Putin further away from his failed objectives. And all of this is possible thanks to something we mentioned at the beginning: Ukraine's new assault tactics. The numbers show that they are working, but what exactly do they consist of? Militarny summarizes what Ukraine is doing differently. It reports that Ukraine now has assault troops that it is using as a tool to break through Russian defenses. The success is due to a fundamental change in tactics. The Moscow Times noted in September that Russia itself is trying to use what it calls sabotage groups to penetrate the front. Syrsky himself explained, "Since the beginning of summer, there has been a change in the enemy's tactics. Their main task is to penetrate as deeply as possible into our territory, retreat, regroup, and advance again." Militarny adds that these Russian units can be as small as 4 or 6 soldiers. Russia's goal seems to be to infiltrate its troops rather than completely break through the front. It's an approach that works, sort of. Russia is managing to reclaim small settlements with these groups. The fact that they are so small means that they can make many small gains that, when added up, look impressive on paper. However, the downside of the Russian approach is being exposed by Ukraine right now. Small units cannot really entrench themselves to erect defenses that can stop a Ukrainian counterattack. Russia's infiltration units are not backed up by armor, and the holes they open in the front are so narrow that Ukraine can quickly close them. Once the gaps are closed, Russian soldiers are surrounded, with no access to supplies or reinforcements. Ukraine then launches its assaults and the territory is lost. Ukraine has created an entirely new branch of its military to carry out these territory recovery assaults, and it works differently from the Air Assault Forces, DSHV. Syrsky explains, "The air assault troops are an elite infantry unit that can attack, defend, and raid, but the assault units are rapid reaction units. They operate where it is most difficult, have no fixed lines of defense, and are called upon to break through the enemy's first line. Russia wants to infiltrate. Ukraine is now countering with small units of its own that react in real time to every Russian advance." Brian Iselin, a former U.S. soldier, details this in his column, The Strategic Edge. He says Ukraine has built a mobile reserve that flows freely and is active throughout the country. That reserve is specifically designed to break through Russian defenses. These assault forces are not fighting alongside the rest of the troops. They are not on the front lines defending themselves. They are dedicated exclusively to launching attacks. The model is clear: small assault groups, lots of night work, flanking instead of frontal thrusts, and here's the key: an immediate handover to heavier units once the door is open. Do you see the fundamental difference? Russia's groups infiltrate and become isolated. Ukraine's groups strike, open the breach, and then armored and mechanized units move in behind them to consolidate the ground. That is why Ukraine's approach works and Russia's fails. Perhaps this is a symptom of Ukraine's defensive posture in the face of Russia's offensive. Russia may not be able to make its new strategy work because it is spreading itself too thin, and as noted, it has already burned through most of its armor. Russia's heavy units may not arrive because they are simply no longer there. To support this new approach, Ukraine has transformed its infantry training. The Kyiv Post highlighted this in an October 10th report. Drones have become the main threat, forcing infantry to remain in fortified trenches. As Army Technology points out, drones are now responsible for up to 80% of casualties. This makes the large-scale assaults that Russia used to favor nearly impossible. However, the infantry has to regain territory. It is one of the few things drones cannot do, at least not yet. Ukraine's new training focuses on Western-style weapons, and most importantly, working in small groups. A soldier with the call sign Shambhala explained it perfectly. Every exercise is about survival. A small group can inflict much more damage than an entire infantry company. Our training principle is called lone soldier in the field. One person, moving, knowing camouflage, reading the enemy's intent, can strike, retreat, strike again, retreat again. That way we can contain the enemy with a small, mobile, and survivable group. Once again, Ukraine is demonstrating its ability to adapt. The same training tactics that Ukraine uses for its defense now appear to be those used by its new assault groups to retake territory. Returning to Mali, Sherbaki, Ukraine will also be happy to reclaim any territory in Zaporizhzhia because of what Russia is doing at the nuclear power plant in that region. Russia captured this plant at the beginning of the war and has held it ever since. Now it appears that Russia is trying to steal it by connecting it to its own power grid. As reported by the Kyiv Independent on October 12th, Russia has deliberately cut the connection between the Ukrainian power grid and the Zaporizhzhia plant. It was not a smart decoupling. It appears that they cut the cable by literally hitting a power line on September 23rd. Since then, the plant has been operating on backup diesel generators. This is incredibly dangerous. Ukraine's foreign minister put it bluntly. This is not just an attempt to steal a peaceful nuclear facility. Rosatom's actions violate nuclear safety protocols, contradict the Ukrainian license, and directly threaten a nuclear incident. These Russian actions put the liberation of Mali Sherbaki in a new perspective. It may seem like a small village, but in the grand scheme of what is happening in the region, a 3.5-kilometer push is a vital step in the right direction. It brings Ukrainian forces a little closer to a nuclear power plant that Russia is mistreating to the point where it could create a catastrophe. Ukraine cannot allow that to happen. In short, what we have witnessed is not just the liberation of a village, it is the validation of a new military doctrine. It is proof that the intelligence, adaptability, and teamwork of small elite assault groups can defeat the brute force and attrition strategy of a superpower. Russia thought it was the tortoise in a long race, but Ukraine has just proven that it is the hawk striking from above, breaking the tortoise's shell at the exact time and place of its choosing. What do you think? Is this new Ukrainian assault doctrine the key to breaking the war's stalemate? Or is Russian mass a force that will inevitably win by attrition? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining us. See you in the next post.